Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios today. We'll be talking about the economic outlook of Pakistan. We'll be talking about the economic development and economic growth. Now, there's a difference and we really would like you to understand what's going on as far as economy is concerned. We are also looking at a certain number that is around 3.4%. I mean, that has also been approved and recommended by the World Bank that this is the number which Pakistan most likely is going to achieve as far as economic growth is concerned. Now, as far as the efforts of the government are concerned to attract the foreign direct investment, I mean, that has become a challenge. And again, when you look at the Chinese investment pouring into Pakistan, that's a different ball game. But when you look at the European or the American investment in particular, especially in the manufacturing side, we hardly see anything happening on that front. Now, talking about the overall situation, when we say that perhaps the CPEC is going to bring in a lot of benefits for the people, and as they say that this is going to be a game changer. So where do we exactly stand at this moment? What about year 2022? What sort of challenges would be there? And what sort of achievements perhaps we'll be able to see. And then on top of that, when you talk about the power sector, again, one thing which is very important, that is about the tariff, and the IMF issue comes into play. And then a lot of people also believe that the state bank perhaps it's been handed over to IMF, and now the reins of the state bank are with the International Monetary Fund. How true is that? We'll also be talking about that. And last but not the least, again, when you talk about the fuel prices, that is perhaps one of the major issue at the moment. You talk about the fuel adjustment surcharge that comes on your electricity bill. That is perhaps something to worry about. Cost of doing business, and the most important part, that is about the ease of doing business. So where do we exactly stand? Now, to talk about that, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. We have with us in our studio on my right is Amer Zafar Durrani Saab. He spent 17 years with the World Bank Group, and he's also the president of Reenergia. Thank you very much, Durrani Saab, for your time. And we have with us from Karachi, Ariba Shahid. She's a business journalist. Thank you very much, Ariba, for your time. Pleasure to have you on the show. And we'll also be talking to Muzammil Aslam Saab, who is the spokesperson to the finance minister. But let me start off from you, Durrani Saab. In fact, a very interesting article. In fact, I was just going through that the other day. Economic development. And we talk about three major areas. So one is about your literacy, education. Second is about the longevity, as they say. How long will you live? What about the quality of life you have? And last but not the least, obviously, that is the health issue. So perhaps the social sector development. So, and obviously, we do understand that economic growth is about the increase in the national income. So our overall GDP growth, though it has been positive, but if you look at the numbers, it's still hovering around 300. So we haven't seen any major growth if you look at it from, let's suppose, 2015-16 onwards. And secondly, sir, the standard of literacy standard has gone down, perhaps because of COVID and a couple of other reasons also, sir. We were expecting 4.2% of the total GDP to be injected in this particular sector so that your youth can get benefit. Last but not the least, Amer Saab, and that is about the health standards, sir. And perhaps I think we have also, we haven't done much in that regard also. So let's start off from these three major aspects, because it seems that, you know, these are not linked, but they are, because at the end of the day, the quality of life, if it's improving, that's your economic development. There you go, sir.
Thank you very much, Faisal. Again, lovely being on your show after a few weeks, but I think you posed a very fundamental question. I mean, we all talk numbers, we all talk about the inflation. Every show one conducts, one talks about, you know, are we going to grow by 7%, 4%, 5%? But what does this really mean? So, you know, one of the things I think the audience should remember is that as far as number games go, we deal in real numbers and we deal with nominal numbers, right?
Correct.
So, you know, maybe what you're seeing today is nominal numbers, and if you want to go back to real numbers, I think that's what you were mentioning, because if you look at real incomes, so let me first say on when you talk of incomes, right? Incomes globally have been going down in real terms. I mean, if an average American today makes less than they did in 1971, if that's the usual comparative, 70, 71 is what's the baseline used. Now, going from there, I think when we should start talking about growth. And when we talk of growth, I think if you look at the SDGs, you start thinking about the fact, not that I'm a great fan of the SDGs, but I think they bring about a way of thinking about growth. And I think the way I look at it, one of my gurus used to say, it's a growth of means and minds, right? So means is your resources. Do I earn more? Is there more in my pocket to spend, whether it be on consumables, whether it be to save, whatever. So those are two things, you know, linked to that. So consumables, which includes recreation and entertainment, that's your means, and including what you save, which again is a very important part of your life. The second part is, as you say, it's the mind. Now, to me, a healthy mind relates to the other two indicators. And again, I'm sorry, I'm putting this in a rather 21st century economics framework. So that's the easiest way I think about this. When I look at all those numbers, I say, have means and minds of people grown, improved? So to me, that is a benchmark. The fact that they don't have a proper baseline for that till now, I mean, is not a problem, because any person with a little bit of knowledge can go around and posit something, be it subjective. So what is happening on the mind side? You said number one, literacy. When you talk of literacy, the good news is that the literacy level, no matter which indicator you check, is growing. Okay, whether you look at a primary side, whether you look at ability to read. What is not growing in Pakistan is the quality of that literacy. So if you look at quality of education, IELTS results, IELTS, you look at all these results, you start finding out that education is being spread at the expense of quality. So that's the basic problem in Pakistan.
Absolutely.
The second thing on health, the quality of health available is by and large improving. But when you look at access, the access is not improving as fast as it should, right? So to me, to open the debate, I think that's to me the very rapid answer to your questions.
Now, another very important issue, Durrani Saab, is about the employment and let me put it this way, underemployment and unemployment. Now, that is something of prime concern, because generally it is believed that 1/3 of the degree holders in Pakistan, they do not have the job. So now today I was listening to the Prime Minister. Now he is really emphasizing on this entrepreneurship, and he believes that that is where you create jobs. That's how an individual or a business also grows. So let this point be discussed with our friend Ariba Shahid. Ariba Shahid, now earlier we spoke about the standard of education, or perhaps the standard of living, let me put it this way, that is the benchmark. Now, interestingly, there are so many universities where they still teach the existing knowledge. We do not create knowledge like United States of America or other European countries, even China does. We are still, teaching the same old formulas, the same old material is still being printed that we used to have in 1970s and 80s. World has changed. I'll just give you an example of Elon Musk. He believes that degree is not the actual requirement. It's your two hands and what you can do with the computer. That is what your output is going to determine about your standard. Now, what I believe in is that the future is changing. There would be lesser jobs because of the automation and AI perhaps. And at the same time, we are still living in the 19th century. We are not improving and not getting ready for the world, let's suppose 2030. Your take on that point?
So I absolutely agree with the fact that our education standards and our education content is decades old, in the sense that we aren't in touch with what is happening around the world, and we aren't adapting to that. So that is something that the education ministry, the educationists, the private school associations in Pakistan, that they really need to consider this. You mentioned Elon Musk. I'm going to mention coding. And the very fact that coding and learning coding at a very young age is now considered an essential skill, um, which isn't as well tapped into in Pakistan as it should be. Um, but things are changing. Uh, so let's talk about it this way. So the number of startups that have grown in Pakistan is encouraging. The number of edtechs that are showing up is also encouraging because not only are those entrepreneurial ventures, but at the same time they're also solving a problem within the country. They're addressing issues that Pakistanis had and are trying to revolutionize the way that we think of education within the country. So those are really interesting things that are happening. And with these, the lag effect would be that in a few years' time, um, the education system in the country will realize that they need to step up and need to become more relevant and more recent with what we're teaching our kids. Because you're absolutely right. The content that students are studying is old, regressive, and it needs to be fresh and new.
Now, another very important point, and that is about the growth rate, since we always mention this very important and interesting phenomena. Now, it is believed, Durrani Saab, that Pakistan really needs to grow at 7% for the next 30 years in order to make sure that the youth, this bubble that's following, just like the concept of the baby boomers in America, sir, they will only be facilitated if this is the number that we need to achieve for the next 30 years. And sir, let's talk about 1990 onwards till 2022. It has been only twice, and that was also during Musharraf's era, sir, if I'm not wrong, that we were able to achieve 7% plus growth rate. It was 8.4 and I think 7.6 if I'm not wrong, sir. Sir, when everything was just smooth and everything was in favor of Pakistan, when we were the frontline ally of the United States of America and a lot of funds were just coming in, and we thought that everything is going to be fine. Shaukat Aziz, I still remember, said that humne kashkol tod diya IMF ka. Remember, sir? So we were out, but now we are in the 22nd program of IMF, where generally when you listen to the opposition, they say that, well, you have sold your State Bank of Pakistan. It has been handed over to IMF. And now we see 3-4 rupees every month increase in the fuel prices. Then you look at the fuel adjustment charges and so on and so forth, sir. Every single individual is being squeezed and squeezed more.
Well, I mean, let me start with the growth estimates, right? Again, I want to repeat something which I've tweeted about. If you look at it last year, around April, we were sitting and we were making these estimates. Now, there are two aspects to this. So first, let me give you what was estimated, what happened, right? Now, the same entities are concerned. I mean, the IMF, there was the fund, the World Bank report, the ADB projections, and some WF projections, right? Last year's projections were below zero. I'm now not even going to make it controversial. So below zero was what everyone else predicted, including our own state bank saying maximum 0.4. When April rolls around, some of the think tanks, including PIDE, went up and said, well, this could be more than 3 to 4%, given the output numbers that we are looking from the various composition sectors.
Correct.
So what actually ended up happening was, again, I will not quote it exact, but let's say we ended up between 3 and 5. We will find out exactly because our books are reconciled much later. And now yet again a year has taken place and slightly better than the first pandemic year. And here we are now. If someone says, here's the fun part. So what really happened was, the estimates were off by not 1, not 2, not 3, 4 to 5%. So the good news that I think from today's Tribune articles is, if those people are saying, I don't want to name them, and if they are saying 4%, well, okay, good, then maybe we are hitting 8. Okay, that's for the, sort of suppositions. Now there are two parts again to this. Pakistan government, why does it not have its own good estimates? First thing there is that we have now all the wherewithal. Let's take wheat crop coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what you'll find in the archaic corridors of the government and the bureaucracy is that they will look at and they will project what has happened between spending as well as the incomes, right? Similarly, they will say crop projections based on, how much inputs were utilized. Well, most countries can now do this, including Pakistan. If you were to involve your satellite agencies like Suparco, you can actually come up with pretty solid numbers based on color-coded radar 30-meter data.
And these are effective ones?
No, they are perfectly great. I mean, they will actually show you how much the crop has ripened and how much area is there. So forget this idiocy about
the images you
inputs
take from the top.
Yeah, and we have all that data. We have SPOT data coming in, and that's another discussion. We don't utilize even the data we have. Now let's go to another point, which is that, okay, so we know that the numbers you are being given are the formal economy of Pakistan. Now, we always have known that we have an economy, if not equal, people say twice the size of the formal. I say let's assume it's the size of 50-50, right? So that economy is growing much, much faster, and this is actually the problem is that, the PTI representatives come on, they give these rather loose statements, if I may be bold, which basically say, oh, number of cars on road, number of this, number of that. Well, actually, those are very good indicators unless but they just are not able to translate that, right? I can assure you that the informal economy has grown. How? The only formal side of that is car sales, for example. The formal side of that is going to be, let's say, consumables or, FMCGs being so.
Everything that is in black and white. Right?
Now, FMCGs we also know, car sales we also know that not all happen because of the car sales that are registered there, right? If you go right now to the KPMD, the merged districts, you will find all the NCP car markets are flush. Now, if you go on an average road, so what I'm trying to say is, let's assume the formal economy is growing at the number that we saw this morning, 3 to 4%. So let's add to that another growth. So the actual economy is actually twice the size. How fast is that going? Now, you take 50%, so if that's growing at twice of what the formal is growing at, you end up at your 7% growth rate. Now, the thing is, why does only government get into trouble in Pakistan? The Pakistanis don't seem to be in trouble. The number of malls are multiplying, the number of houses bought are multiplying, the construction sector is booming, the large-scale manufacturing is booming.
Look at the prices,
look at the imports.
Going up.
So how do imports happen? I mean, people have money, that's why, whether they get it from the formal market or the informal market. Now, I'm very, very convinced on this, having been part of the Pakistan economy, and studying it for 34 years, that, there is something seriously wrong about traditional number crunching that is going on, right? More documentation, more data, more surveillance, and wrong word, not surveillance, just simply what we call remote data collection. How difficult is it to just go and get a satellite image and see how many new houses were constructed? How difficult it is to multiply by the per square meter cost of that house being constructed? It is not any difficult. So the point is, why are we not doing that? We are not doing that because that's not the narrative we are interested in. We are interested in playing politics.
That is the unfortunate part, but that's the way the country is run, sir, whether we like it or we don't. And one thing very important that you mentioned was about the informal economy. I think it's good to have that. Otherwise, I mean, if you have got 100% transparency and the figures show that there is a negative trend, then that is going to be a problem and a half. But anyway, sir, we've been joined in by Muzammil Saab. Muzammil Aslam is the spokesperson to the Finance Minister. Assalamu alaikum, and sir, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to PTV World.
Thank you.
Muzammil Saab, first of all, sir, if I may put a very, very layman question to you, when we talk about the economic situation or the economic outlook of Pakistan, sir, how satisfied are you, sir, Muzammil Saab? Because you're somebody who is into this field for quite some time. You understand the game of the numbers. You understand how it could be translated and explained. Your take, sir.
Okay. Let's not go into any particular area. I may sound, optimistic if I'm going to say, we have a good tax collection, export number, remittances, or if I'm going to say, inflation is the issue. Let's just take a bird eye view. Let's just say if there are 10 economic variables, if we have performed anything good in the 6th economic variable, it means we are doing good. So, how to gauge that? This is, the only way you can gauge it with the sovereign credit rating you have been given by the international independent rating agencies. When we took over, our rating, there are two things in the rating. One is the rating plus outlook. When we took over, the outlook of our rating was negative. And we got this stable rating in 2020 during the COVID. Since then, a lot of people have been saying, Pakistan economy has been deteriorating, or, our current account is again going to be, touch the unsustainable levels, our debt are not sustainable. The rating agencies, we just got the rating from all three rating agencies a couple of days back, from S&P, Moody's and Fitch. The rating agencies, they are still maintaining Pakistan outlook, stable, plus the rating what we had in last year. So that shows our economic indicators are on the right side of the economy. Yes, there are, you can pinpoint the variables which is not in our favor. For example, inflation, we have an admission. Inflation is on the rise, particularly due to international commodity price hike. But thankfully, we have been managing the local prices of the food item or stabilizing, in the last 7-8 weeks. If you look at the SPI number of the last 8 weeks, out of 8 times, 6 times has gone negative. Primarily just because the food prices, vegetable prices, they are either stable or went down, like sugar, onion, tomatoes, different things. But, we have been struggling on the international commodity super spike because of the higher energy prices, and that results into higher electricity prices, petrol prices, and that feeds into the sector who are consuming gas and electricity to produce goods and services. That is the area we are struggling, but we cannot do much about it because the only thing we can do is we can sacrifice our tax just to tame the prices of these products. So we in the petrol prices, we are mandated to get 17% sales tax. In the last review, we are just charging 0.79%. So we have been sacrificing this just to make sure, the full impact should not be passed on to the end consumer. But having said this all, we still believe this is heavy on the pocket of the people, especially the common person, and we are hitting this fact.
Muzammil Saab, talking about the credit rating, sir, I was not shocked, actually. I was surprised, rather, to see, that recession that started in the United States of America in 2007-8, sir. Most of these companies which were AAA rated were bankrupt the next day. So, and I've also learned that, you pay money and you can get the ratings better, either for your company or for otherwise. I mean, this is a reality. Number two, sir, you talked about inflation, sir. It's right in front. You walk out, you talk to anybody, and they will complain about the price hike, sir. And on the other side, sir, when you look at the prices of fruit or vegetable for that matter, which is considered to be some precious commodities now, especially fruit, 50% of it goes into waste because we do not have any storage facilities or perhaps any proper infrastructure. Nothing has been done on that, sir. We keep hearing and we keep hearing. When you talk about the electricity bill, sir, honestly speaking, look at the fuel adjustment surcharge, sir. I had never seen, but now when I look at that document that we receive every month, sir, with the bills, whether it's electricity or otherwise, it's pretty shocking. Look at the consumption, look at the quality which we are getting, and at the end of the day, sir, this is what is happening. And we heard that we will be having these Swedish smart electric meters. Nothing has been done so far. Talking about the sales tax of fuel, sir, the overall trickle down, in fact, impact isn't that percentage which you increase. It's almost thrice or rather 3 times more. So, Muzammil Saab, I mean, what is the comprehensive policy that the current government is looking at? A lot of people are pointing their fingers towards the finance minister, Mr. Shaukat Aziz. A lot of people do say that perhaps he's a banker, but he is not an economist, so that is the problem. What do you say?
I've been covering economy for the last 18 years and on the day-to-day basis. So thing you have pointed out about 2008, that was a turning point in the history of all rating agencies. And I'm glad you remember that instance. All the ratings they have given to these companies at that point of time, they got busted. But since then, they have learned from that instance, and the way now they are assessing ratings of the country, it's completely changed. And the second thing is, if these ratings are useless, why the investors are relying on that? So you need to understand there has been a transition. So, if we have maintained rating with a stable outlook, you need to appreciate rather than doubting on their ability. And that's exactly happened with IMF and World Bank. They were keep on pushing, our GDP is going to be 1% last year, and then eventually it came up to 4%, and then they have to revise it back to 4%. So, all is not bad from our side. If we say anything, we say with the number, not with the, secondly, the first thing I did the admission in front of you is price hike. And I did not say, the inflation is not here. And the thing I have told you right away that, what is troubling us and what is causing us, stress is energy prices, international commodity prices. The only thing we can do is we can give away our taxes to some extent. At the end of the day, we have to run the budget as well. We have to give salaries and everything. But if you look at the indicators of the economy, if economy is really doing bad, why the taxes are going up? Why the exports are going up? Why the remittances? The last year, Bangladesh and we had the same run on remittances, but this year, Bangladesh remittances are down 21%. Lot of people speculating the same for Pakistan as well, but we have been sustaining this remittances as well. Apart from that, we've got the bumper crops, sugarcane bumper crop, sugar prices came down from 100, below 100 rupees. As I said, vegetable prices. So we have a good domestic productivity levels, which has infused money to the rural economy. Where people are struggling is rural, urban area, and especially the fixed salary people. There is no denial of it. And we have been saying this. And that is actually the world problem now. It was a year ago Pakistan's problem, but now it's a world problem. Just today, UK data came out, 30-year high inflation. USA last week, 40-year high inflation. So what is this? How can we keep the price level down if the world, the originator of the products and services are struggling? Chinese, producer price inflation has, broken the record of 1995. So that is the reality we need to accept. We have to admit that, there is an inflation, and at the same time, one need to inform or, the thing is, what is the reality in the world at the moment going on? On our side, what we're trying to do is, since international inflation is very high and in fact troubling us, we are making sure to make income levels better. But for salary class, we cannot do it overnight. If you look at the stock exchange, 100 companies profit, that has gone to 930 billion rupees. It was 580 billion rupees in 2018. If you look at the credit offtake, first time in the history of Pakistan, the credit offtake, private credit offtake, I'm not saying the public private offtake, private credit offtake, this year touched all-time high of 1,450 billion rupees. That shows the economy is expanding. People are putting money in the expansions. The only way to counter inflation is employment and rising income level. We are doing our best, but it cannot be offsetted overnight.
That is correct, sir. But anyway, thank you very much for your input. Now coming to you, Ariba, Shahid, couple of very important points I want you to throw light on. Number one, since Muzammil Saab spoke about the macro environmental factors which are beyond our control. I'm not talking about the developed countries here, because when you compare Pakistan with the developing countries and the growth rate, average growth rate, we're still pretty much towards the 3 figure number three, this 3%. You talk about the developing countries, we are far behind them, you know, we're not even competing with them. Yes, remittances, I think one of the program that was launched in Pakistan that, you know, you deposit your money, you bring it from abroad, even if you take, you know, credit from there, where you have to pay 1% and you bring that money in Pakistan and make 3, 4, 5% profit on that and keep on returning that money. I mean, this is what people are doing, by the way, and this is happening. Perhaps that is the reason that Bangladesh did not let it happen to their country, whereas they believe in programs like Grameen Bank, which has not only given a lot of financial strength to the women, but has also made sure that all the women who are working in the textile sector, more than 60% by the way, and look at where their production and productivity is. So different comparisons should be there. But Ariba, your take on that point, where you see that generally when you compare Pakistan with the neighboring countries, because unfortunately we always end up comparing ourselves with India, where do we stand?
So it's very nice to hear that the government is agreeing to the fact that there is inflation. So Muzammil conceding that is great. I just wanted to add one thing to that. It was the fact that inflation and the reason why Pakistanis are complaining, despite inflation being a global phenomenon where the world is witnessing really high inflation rates, the fact that Pakistanis are complaining is because of the fact that since 2019, the inflation rate in Pakistan has been relatively high. And although there were a few months of relaxation in between, uh, prior to the pandemic, the inflation rates were high and they've continued, you know, through and through. And considering how prices are downward sticky and how prices do not really come down once a company decides to increase the price, and considering the you know other factors as well, inflation seems more intensified for a Pakistani than other countries. So I feel that this is something that is not as much spoken about. As much as it should be. So if we talk about why inflation is an issue, it's because of this. So yes, he's absolutely right. The international prices have a major role to play in it. But we've also got to admit that it's been a very long time, you know, that Pakistanis are going through this. Moving on to your question, as far as remittances are concerned, so the remittance trend could also, you know, you and I have spoken about this a lot as well. Okay, this could be a one-time thing. This could be a fluke. This could be something that is not sustained. But the very fact is that I feel that as a country, we rely way too much on remittances. And Faisal, I believe that you're going to agree with me. It would be better to see this money come from within the country than from someone abroad sending in support. It would be good if the country was self-sufficient at this point in time. So while remittances is growing, helps the economy, helps stabilize growth, helps with the dollar, helps with the rupee and the current account deficit. At the end of the day, how long till we rely on remittances? So yeah, and if we talk about Bangladesh and if we talk about Pakistan and you know the arbitrage that's happening because of Russian digital accounts and the savings, the Naya Pakistan certificates, if we talk about that, like people are getting cheap credit across the world, they're putting in money here, and it's kind of like another form of hot money that's happening. So again, the growth that we're seeing and the fact that you said that, you know, we need around 7% growth, the question should be at what cost? Is this growth sustainable? And if it isn't, are we ready for another bust?
And Ariba, I mean, at the end of the day, whether we talk about remittances, they've increased, or, you know, there's a cushion. I mean, look at the overall, I mean, look, if you just do the breakdown of the reserves that we have, so we are getting from left, right, and center. The point is that, you know, I fail to understand that it's just like, you know, I asked Durrani Saab to keep his money in my account, and that money I cannot use other than whatever, or maybe I don't have the right to use it. It's just there. And then, you know, whenever he wants, he will take it back, say within 72 hours, or if I'm unable to pay, he is going to take away, hostile takeover over my property. You know, this is the kind of deals that Pakistan has set. I mean, it is really, you know, one feel very disgraced, to tell you the truth. The only option that we should look forward to is increasing our exports. Because the reason is, at the end of the day, I mean, we were hovering around 22, $23 billion almost 15, 16 years ago. And there was a constant increase. God knows where did we go wrong. We have lost our market share. Other countries are just picking up on that. I mean, we were the champs as far as textile is concerned. We stand nowhere now. That market share has been taken away. Sorry?
We need to move beyond. We need to move beyond.
Exactly.
Textile.
There is no
Textile
product
is very
diversification.
important.
We are not looking for new markets. I mean, what's the rocket science? I mean,
go-
are bureaucrats sitting as ambassadors and having huge teams? Are they're just to enjoy good dinners and have some fine dines and all? Or they are supposed to work? I mean, at the end of the day, it's the economic diplomacy. That's the new word.
If I may.
I don't understand what our trade attaches are doing over there across the world. We've got trade attaches in almost every country. I don't understand what they're doing. And the very fact that we choose markets that are low premium, low value addition markets, that's also a really bad sign. Why don't we go to premium markets? Why don't we sell our products in high-end markets and get more bang for a buck?
Well, I mean,
And how many brands do we have, by the way?
No, I mean, before we move to premium markets,
please.
Let's get to remittances. I think that you guys are bad-mouthing remittances, so I should sort of stand up for them for a few minutes. I think at the end of the day, look, remittances are a good and a bad tool. We should not remember that remittance is not there to play a role in growth. Remittance is there for basically having some forex available for purchases or for other instrumental use. So it's a tool. At times it's a tool. So let me give you an example. It's whose hands is it a tool in? Now, so basically, look, because of the COVID, you had lower hotel travel. So all the money they used to outflow through visa because of Pakistanis traveling abroad, etc., things like that, paying for their tickets. Air travel has gone down, so keep that in mind. So let's say the state. So far, when the remittances were up, it was used as a tool to basically, stand up
Support
the PKR. You know? So appreciation of PKR has not done us too good, right? I mean, so it really hasn't done much good for us. I don't think ever. And I'll link this to inflation.
Well, that increases your
I'll just quickly link it to inflation. So if you come back here, so they'll sell dollars in the market and you get some sort of staying of the PKR. In the hands of the public, let's say these remittances come back, and I'm not going to talk about the Russian digital account because you guys have already pretty much said what I wanted to say. So let's talk of these remittances going into where? The remittances are all going in because what have we done? We have this whole real estate amnesty scheme, construction amnesty schemes, white your money, blah, blah. So the only reason we are, and I think, and Ali Khizr at Biz Scholar disagrees at times, but on this I think we agree, that, end of the day, what you're seeing is that the money that used to come informally across the border, not that that's totally stopped, but because of slightly more difficulty, so your average thief like you and me decides to go through the channel. When they go through the channel, they bring this remittance in, they park it where? So they are immediately going, so the state bank gets the benefit of the dollar, but where does this money go? This is now the connection between remittances and growth. So basically this money goes into the most deadest sector on earth. It goes into real estate, right? So what is it doing? It's temporarily propping up. It's not going to industry. I don't see remittances being used from Swat all
have
the
a
way
house,
down to
buy a plot.
Okay, now before that, let's go back to inflation. I think inflation is a supply side problem in Pakistan, right? I think everyone just says, oh, keep the mehungi ho gayi. What does it mean that prices are up? Prices are up because there are fewer goods and a lot of money chasing them. Now, the thing is, whether this money, and I'll take a sugar as an example, and Ariba, please correct me if I'm wrong. So what's happening in sugar, right? Who's the major most consumer of sugar, right? In pure form or production form or in molasses or etc. All byproducts of the sugar mills. It's between the FMCG producers and the mithaiwalas, right? So, this is where the end product prices. So the mithais go up. Who gives a damn? Who's going to eat a gulab jamun is going to eat a gulab jamun, whether he's going to buy one or they're going to buy 2 dozen of them, right? Now, the problem there then says, is inflation happening? I mean, this is where I challenge most of the students of economics who call themselves economists, that, end of the day, is the farm gate price going up? No, it's actually the retail outlet price that's going up, which is a great indicator of, So let me put it more simply. Is the value going back to the farmer going up? Well, you have support prices, but look beyond that a little bit, right? That's not happening. It's the retail, at my retail outlet, the point of sale where the value is going up. So I don't even want to go into the multi-factors of that. But what is that really telling me? For higher inflation to me tells me that there is a lot more money in the economy circulating, right? So now we come back to saying, oh, this is a very high inflationary period. So sorry, Ariba, but if you go back, and there's a white paper by Manviwala that just came out last week, I mean, they themselves accept that the highest inflation rate since Musharraf's time has been in the 08-09 period. I mean, Ali Salman was there with me.
I agree with you that this is not the highest inflation period in Pakistan. I'm just saying that it's been a little more consecutive and continuous, and that is why people are feeling it more. So this is not the highest. We aren't even near hyperinflation, you know, uh, region. We're really far from it. We're far from the peak as well, the peak that Pakistan has historically seen. But the fact that it's been consistently high, not historically high, is the reason why there's more, uh, pushback from people. And the very fact that incomes have not risen, especially because of the pandemic, and there were hiring freezes, there were salary increases that were stopped during the pandemic, and that's why people are feeling it more. And I don't know if you have noticed, but there's also an uncounted for inflation happening beyond numbers, and that is shrinkflation. All right, which we do not put into numbers because we can't really quantify it. Number of things that have shrinked in the FMCG world itself. If you buy a pack of chips, the weightage has gone down. If you buy a pack of biscuits, the weight has gone down. Similarly, instant noodles, things like that. These are just small examples of everyday items that have reduced in size because one, the store people did not want to increase the price because in Pakistan, prices are increasing usually in multiples of fives and tens. So things like this is also, these are numbers that don't really go into counting, but they are real stories about inflation. And I'm not going to be a panic spreading person saying that, this is historically one of the highest periods. No, this is not. We're not even close to that. It was way worse during 2008, during the PPP era. It was way worse during that. And that is also a cycle. It's also a cyclical thing where we had a nice period prior to this where inflation was at a low. So I'm not saying that there's doom and gloom. So please, I just want to put that out there.
No, great. So
yes,
if I may just quickly, Faisal,
please.
Also shrinkflation, yes. Shrinkflation is what, it's called the pyramid, right? I mean, it's been happening every time. In 1971, you used to buy a whole thing of Sunsilk, and then, Sunsilk, now you went to a smaller and smaller and smaller. This is FMCGs. That's why the highest dividends are paid out this year. All the funny, cushy people in the Pakistan Business Council who earn more than 50 billion rupees turnover per, I mean, that's the minimum to get in. So we don't even get dreaming on that. So I think she's making a good point. Yes, the things are shrinking. So, I mean, they are understanding the buying power. Ariba is talking the buying power of the average person. But are they buying less? Well, obviously they're not, because the total number of packages sold are going up. So there is money in the economy. Now, please, 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 I challenge the government today to take a calorie survey. And I was explaining this to somebody. I mean, unfortunately, my last point posting was Central Asia, so I think of calorie surveys, right?
One of your benchmarks to measure the poverty, by the way.
No, it's not my benchmark. You go to all of Europe, Central Asia, the European Bank, and EBRD, World Bank, ADB, they put everybody to test. Because you can't use a $2 benchmark or a 2-point-some dollar or $1 a day benchmark. No, because you have to go with a certain calorie value. That calorie value, which for human beings translates in these days numbers at $7. So that's for them, because they live in cold climates, they need more calorie intake. The problem with the ASAS program, the problem with Sania Nishtar, the problem with her entire team is that they just don't do these surveys. They're still hung up on BISP. Now, the innovation that people need to do, you need to do, I need to do, Ariba needs to write about, is that, come on, let's do a sample size. 27,000 households. How long is it going to take, Ariba? I just did 1,600 households in 2 weeks, right? It's just now with CAPIs, it's so easy, right? So a private sector organization should take on that challenge and do this. I'll tell you what you'll find out. Caloric intake has not gone down.
It's the same,
not gone
or it's
down.
gone up?
It's actually gone up.
Okay.
So again, I mean, this is not a factor of me sitting in some white sand.
And the benchmark is still 2100
so 2100
calories.
20, yeah, I think it's still 2100 calories. But you have to remember that we are it depends on climate. So for us, for the north,
it is different. Yeah.
So we'll use the $7 benchmark in, let's say, in Hunza, Gizar.
Yeah.
We'll use a different benchmark down in the south, in Tata or something like that, or even as for that matter in Mashakhel in Balochistan.
All right.
So. Yeah.
All right, but unfortunately, sir, running out of time. That's the problem. But great to have you in the show. So, and it's always good talking to you about these important subjects, sir. And thank you very much, Ariba, for your time as well. Always good to have you on the show. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow at 8:05 p.m. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.